Whenever you're ready, Luis.
Can I learn?
Sure, for sure. I don't know if you want to open this window, maybe, Eduardo. What do you think?
Yes. So, good evening, everyone. My presentation is about schools of economic thought. For sure, we have a lot of economic thoughts, but I tried to brought the main schools. I choose 5 that's, in my opinion, the most famous nowadays in the world. So let's begin. A school of economic thought is just a group of thoughts about a group of economists in a determined perspective, how society could treat economics. So, for me, in my opinion, the main schools relevant in the world are the classical school, the Marxism school, the Keynesian school, monetarism school, and Austrian school. Each school has a leader that become these thoughts. For example, the classical school become with Adam Smith, that is considered the father of economics because the first book wrote of economic things it's by him. He is that book, Wealth of Nations, that is considered the Holy Bible of economic books, because every school of thought before, after the classical school, have influence by the Wealth of Nations. So I choose to begin with the first school. For example, Adam Smith, he believed that the state needs to do just a small intervention on economics, and he was the pioneer of to brought the idea that the division of labor could, the division of labor plus the free market could let a nation reach very wealth. Because, for example, he brought the argument about it. For example, if my nation is good to produce corn or to produce soil or salt, and the other nation is good to take copper, to take silver from the ground, it's better I trade corn for silver and copper for salt, because I'm efficient to do this thing, and the other nation is more efficient to do that thing. So we trade, and that's the wealth rise. So he believes too that free market creates an invisible hand by the law of supply and demand. You know, for example, if there is one chair in the world, and people want to chair to sit. So if there is just one chair, this chair it's very expensive because it's just one. But for example, if we have in a nation 1 million chairs, a 500,000 people in that nation, is 2 chairs for people. So in this case, there is chair enough, so the price will decrease a lot because the demand is not strong, and the supply is very strong. So he brought one more important thing in my perspective, that money is just a matter of belief. For example, he brought an interesting phrase in the Wealth of Nations book. He said in the first chapter, corn is necessary, but silver is just a superfluid. Because, for example, money is a question of matter, in the past we use silver, gold, or copper as money because it's easier to create coins. It's difficult to fake and stuff like this. But for example, when a disaster happens and destroy all the corn in this nation, silver doesn't matter enough. Silver is not important, you know. So in this case, corn is so much important than money in that era. That's money means silver in the 18th century. I brought here an interesting phrase that he brought you in his third chapter, that labor was the first price, the original purchase, money that was paid for all things. It wasn't by gold or by silver, but by labor, that all wealth of the world was originally purchased. Why he said this? Because he believed that the real price of one product is how much hours of labor was put over this product. For example, I take 20 hours of labor to produce this chair. So I take my price per hour, more the guy who take the plastic, more the guy who take the wood, and I do a math calc, and there is the price, a fair price to sell the product, you know. In my opinion, this is a mistake of him. After in the presentation I will show because this is not correct, but this was taken serious at least for 1.5 century. This idea was considered right, but after we gonna see that it's not right, this affirmation of Adam Smith. And here I brought the main proof that the division of labor plus free market creates wealth in the world. Here, in the beginning of 19th century, was the beginning of free market division of labor. For example, in this era, exactly in this era, when nations become trade things with one to other, and companies become to do division of labor. This guy will take the wood, this guy will take the plastic, this guy will take all the pieces and put together to produce a product. So we create specialized professionalism. It's very more efficient that one guy take the wood, after take the plastic, after do a complete chair. And we can see the result. All the centuries before, the population in the world lived in poverty, total poverty. But in just a little more than 200 years, the GDP per capita of the world comes to 300, 400 by more than $6,000 per capita in the world. The second school is the Marxism school by Karl Marx, very contentious school, very polemic school, you know. He came 7 years after Adam Smith. So he saw the companies take the employees and put the employers works like 14, 15 hours per day in a very difficult situation. This is the belief that the thinkers think that Karl Marx wrote this way. In his book Capital, Karl Marx brought the idea that capitalism is immoral because he explained with a formula by labor theory of value. that is called to surplus value. He brought the example, for example, if I produce I produce, for example, $1,000 per month, but my salary is $500. The other $500 is the profit of capitalism. That is immoral, because this is wrong. The employers had been stealing by the owners of the companies. That's the fault of Marx, you know. So he believed that with time the poor class will lead a revolution to overthrow the capitalism system. So he believed in this. With time we see that capitalism is still strong. Independent if you believe it's a good system or bad system, most of the world is capitalism. The most of countries nowadays. He brought an interest quote in his book Capital that I found interesting. Accumulation of wealth at one pole is at the same time accumulation of misery, agony of toil, slavery, ignorance, brutality, mental degradation at the opposite pole. So we can see that his thought were all the wealth of the world is already created, already existent, but he didn't believe that the wealth is created, like Adam Smith. So there is a certain number of wealth in the world. For me, be rich, the other guys needs to be poor. This is his thought. I don't agree with his thought too. After I will demonstrate why. Here I explain better the surplus value, that the meaning the surplus produces over and above what's required to survive, which is translated into profit in capitalism. For example, here I brought an example. An employee produces 10K of a value per month. His salary is 5K per month. This other 5K is the profit of capitalists. Oh, that means the super value. So the employer has been stealing. But in my opinion, he didn't consider that the owner of the company is to be the first money to invest, to create a company, to buy machines, to put your skin in the game, and other things. So, in my opinion, the worst thing in this school is that you don't incentive the development, because you don't incentive the profit. So, what's the incentive of human race to produce hard things, pass hours by hours of labor without any reward? So that's my opinion, but it's a lot of controversies and discussions. The far left politicians like to use like arguments around the world, and that's it. The third one is the Kennan School by John Keynes. This school rose from the Great Depression in the United States on the 1939. Despite the fact of Keynes being British, he saw the crisis on the United States in that era, and he thought, okay, how we can save the economy in a health way? The government should rule credit in economic to incentive demand. Kennan School is it's called to the demand side of the economics, because John Keynes believed if you incentive credit on indeterminate things, we help this determined field to development. He assumes that we will create inflation, but he assumes too that we need to be careful to control the inflation at the same time. There is a limit. The biggest proof that this doesn't work so well was the crisis of real estate in the United States in 1928, because the American government incentivized a lot of credit to American people buy houses, apartments, something like this. But the American government made a mistake. It gave credit more than should be. So this created a bubble, and when the inflation started to increase, the government needs to cut down the credit and the crisis began. So the Keynesianism school works in cycles, There is the cycles, the economics begins to decrease the speed, we incentivize by credit, this explodes. After that, we need to cut the credit because the inflation increases, and when we cut the credit, the things goes down in a very fast way, and the crisis happens. I brought a quotation by him too, that successful investing is the anticipations of others. That is more of the same, For him, we needed to anticipate the steps of the natural steps of economic things, by the state. He believed in a balance of demand and supply, We need to use the interest rate by central banks or other ways to try to bring the economic for the balance between demand and supply. Here's an example that I thought. For example, there is money to liquidity, and he throw money for the banks, and the banks throw money for companies, institutions that with money will create more jobs, will invest into developing products or services. But there is another risk on that if the government incentive credit, the biggest chance this credit go for the friends of the government, it's very high, So there is a parallel effect that this thought could increase the corruption inside the system, because big companies could use the state to do a corruption, I will take the money first, and the other little entrepreneurs will not take this credit, so I can buy a lot of things, and they try to find out themselves, The fourth is the monetarism school. I like the monetarism school. It's not my favorite, but the biggest guy of monetarism school is Friedman. He is a lot of famous in the United States, and he doesn't believe that the state should intervene in economic, and the central bank could just print money. The amount of the central bank could print money, just the budget how the GDP growth. Because if you just print, for example, if a GDP growth 2% this year, the money in the total money in a society could increase 2% by central bank, and the inflation will keep 0%. this is he called fairly state per year, you know. And there are a lot of people that like Milton Friedman, a lot of people don't like it, but he's a lot famous and very influent in his economics course in university in the United States. I brought one phrase by him that the inflation is taxation without legislation. I comment, I think last class, that inflation is a tax without law, without passed by the parliament or the Congress. And that is a truth, because if the central bank create a lot of credit, it gave you money for whoever, there are more money into the society, and the money will worth less, because it's the same quantity of products and services, but there are more money, so the money worth less. So inflation is just a tax without legislation. And there is a book of Milton Friedman called Free to Choose. In his book, he brought an interest board with 4 squares into this board. The first square, he brought the idea, for example, imagine you take your money and we spend with yourself. You're gonna economize and seek highest value. For example, if I take my money and I spend with myself, I want to buy a good thing, a good product or good service without pay so much for that. You know? This is your money with yourself. The second square, he brought the idea of your money, but we spend with someone else. For example, if you have your money, but you want to buy a gift for a friend, it's your money, and you have idea what your friend wants by gift. But maybe you buy a gift, but you're not precisely on the gift. You commit a mistake. It's not assertive what he really wants, you know. But it still keeps a high value, you know, because there is a close friendship, you know, the other people. So it's a high chance to be assertive, but not so much as spend with yourself. The third square, he brought the idea of you take money from someone else and you spend with yourself. So in this case, the human being tend to expand with a lot of value, but without care. If I found $1,000 on the ground, I will take this from the ground and I will expand in a good restaurant with clothes, with expensive things. But the care, I will not be so careful as I will labor if I work for that money, you know. That is the third square. And the last one, the fourth square, he brought the idea of I take the money someone else and I spend it with someone else. Just pass for me the money, you know. This is the most dangerous, because you take money from someone else, you don't care so much about this money, you spend it with someone else, so it's not with you. You tend to not so be careful with taking this money, you spend with correct things. And the fourth square, he brought the idea, the fourth square is the state, is the government, you know. He take the money from the people and he spend with someone he wants to expand. So it's very dangerous. So in his idea, in his thoughts, the state need to be as small as possible, you know. The private companies work in society. He inspired so much, he have influenced by Adam Smith too. if you could compare the book of Adam Smith and Milton Friedman. The idea is like the same, but Milton Friedman brought this for the contemporary world, because Milton Friedman he died like 20 years ago, you know. And the last one that I chose was the Austrian School, created by Karl Menger, and he brought the idea that through the Adam Smith thoughts about the price of this chair, for example, how much labor is put over that. Karl Menger said, the price of a specific product is not how much labor you put over that. Is just one fact of price. The real price of the product is how much the people want that. Is called marginal utility. If this product were very useful, the people want, doesn't matter how much labor, how much hours of labor were put over that, will be over so much, the price will increase. And the same in the verse. For example, the total hours spent in this chair was 15 hours. And the total hours spent in this chair was 30 hours. Tends to be more cheap this chair because 20 hours less. But let's imagine that people want black chair, just black chair. Doesn't matter how much hours were spent over this chair. This chair will offer so much that this one, because the people want that. And he calls this like marginal utility, you know. The real price is how much useful is that product for people, not how much labor, how much effort was put over it. After that, another Austrian economist called Ludwig von Mises, that is my favorite economist. He brought the idea inside the Austrian School, how much money is too much? For example, he brought the idea that the state could be toxic because one idea. Let's take an example. If the state spends 100 billion reais with health care for the population, and the health care is not so much good, the politicians will look at that, he said, maybe if you put more money, you work better. So the politicians increase this budget of health for 150 billion reais per year. But after 1 year, 2 years, it still doesn't work so well. So the politicians look for that and thought, oh my God, I need to put more money. We can see that is an uncultural thing, you know, because the money is not, the money is taken by the population, it's not infinite. So it's the fourth square of Milton Friedman, you know? It's just politicians spend money from someone else with someone else, you know? It's try to do a determined service or product works, put a lot of money, but maybe it's not the answer, the correct answer, just put more money, you know. So he brought the idea, how much money is too much. Another example that Ludwig von Mises brought is, let's put a taxation about rich people. But how much is rich? 5 million, 10 million of portfolio, 50 million. 50 million, okay. But a guy who has 48 million, he's not rich, you know. And this is another effect too. If the state put taxation without great elves, this wealth just run away and the rich people have resource to do that, you know. Maybe the rich people prefer to spend 100 million reais with lawyers to do runaway money by the law, despite the fact to just pay 2-3 billion reais in tax, you know. So this is another thought that Mises brought. And another thing that I like by Austrian School, the focus is on individuals. It's the Austrian schools go beyond of economics. They go for the ethical and moral subjects. For example, how much is free an individual? They have the only thing that keeps the individual happy is the most freedom he have. At least the Mises thought in this way, because he is freedom, he has liberty. He could seek for your ways to pursue your happiness, you know, and not use the state to try to do the happiness of the society, you know. So the Austrian schools, the focus is on individuals, not in society. And another thing that Austrian schools brought, the elf did not exist, is created. Again, he brought a parallel of Adam Smith that said to the elf is created, not she not already existed. All the elf is created by time, you know. For example, again, I brought this example of chair, but if I want a shovel to dig things, for example, I need the guy to chop a tree, the other guy to take the iron from the ground, it do the shape of a shovel edge, you know. To this, you create elf, you create something that worth from someone else. This someone else wants to buy a shovel, you know. So you create elf. And this is the beginning how the wealth is created. If you created something useful for other individuals. This is the thought of Austrian schools. And there is a good phrase that I brought here, that man himself is the beginning and the end of every economy. Again, he just affirmed the focus is on individuals. Another Austrian schools brought the idea that the Austrian schools beat so much in the society, that is the fractional reserve bank circle. It's something more deeper into the society, but is how central banks fraud the money. For example, in the old times, I want, for example, $1,000. I have $1,000 and I put a deposit into the bank. The bank gives me a paper, wrote, you deposit here $1,000. So we have the same quantity proportionally of gold inside this bank, you know? Because if you want to withdraw, you have a gold to withdraw, you know? The currently financial system worldwide is a fraud, because the Austrian schools let this very, very clear. For example, if I have $1,000, right, and I do a deposit in the bank, nowadays the bank just keep $100 by the 1,000, and the 900 he make a loan for someone else to gain some interest over that. But for example, this guy take a loan for $900. He spent buy a product. The guy who sell the product has $900. If he puts the money into the bank, he put another $900 into the bank. the bank take 900 for inside him and loan more 810. But this $900 is already inside of the bank, you know? Like you double the money here, but the money already just exists 1,000. But now you have 2,710 money inside the bank, but the real money is just 1,000, you know? So again, the cycle repeats. The guy take 810, buy something, the guy who sell take 810 and put into the bank keeps $81 or reais, whatever, low more 700. You know how it gives us vicious addiction cycle? The real money is just 1,000, but in the end, the bubble is almost 3,500. So, for example, in Brazil, it's the quantity of money that already exists. It's about 15–17%. If today 17% of Brazilians got inside a bank agency and say for the bank, or the guy who works there, I want my money. This money doesn't exist, you know. This is very dangerous because this money created, the most of the times is loan for big companies who is friends, government's friends, something like this, you know. But who create credit, again, you create inflation because there are more money created by imagination of the central bank, you know. So this is very dangerous because the people who don't so much resource to make a loan pay a tax by inflation for the guys who take the loan. So this is the current financial system in the world, worldwide. Central banks fraud the money to make more credit that already not exists, this real credit, to loan for friends or something like this. This has a parallel with the Keynesianism school of thought too, you know. Murray Rothbard, the Austrian economist, brought in one book that he wrote, this is a fraud. Because even the money, even the gold doesn't exist anymore, no? Like in the past. It's just created. I saw one survey in 2017 that Brazilian people has 700 billion reais on the saving accounts, but the real money is just 110 billion. So the other 590 billion is just created by the imagination of the central bank that press a button, it created money, you know. It is created the effect of inflation, it is created an invisible tax, and it just poor people pay a tax by the great companies or something like this, or the government friends. And this is invisible for the 99% of the population. That's it. I would like to maybe put a video about Milton Friedman, speed,
sure.
Very fast video. Where is it? I don't know what video I can put. I think they put the Milton Friedman defense the free market maybe. Here, they are Portuguese syntax, but okay.
Look at this lead pencil. There's not a single person in the world who could make this pencil. Remarkable statement? Not at all. Look at this lead pencil. There's not a single person in the world who could make this pencil. Remarkable statement? Not at all. The wood from which it's made for all I know, comes from a tree that was cut down in the state of Washington. To cut down that tree, it took a saw. To make the saw, it took steel. To make the steel, it took iron ore. This black center, we call it lead, but it's really graphite, compressed graphite. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think it comes from some mines in South America. This red top up here, the eraser, bit of rubber, probably comes from Malaya, where the rubber tree isn't even native. It was imported from South America by some businessmen with the help of the British government. This brass ferrule, I haven't the slightest idea where it came from, or the yellow paint, or the paint that made the black lines, or the glue that holds it together. Literally thousands of people cooperated to make this pencil. People who don't speak the same language, who practice different religions, who might hate one another if they ever met. When you go down to the store and buy this pencil, you are in effect trading a few minutes of your time for a few seconds of the time of all those thousands of people. What brought them together and induced them to cooperate to make this pencil? There was no commissar sending out orders from some central office. It was the magic of the price system, the impersonal operation of prices that brought them together and got them to cooperate to make this pencil so that you could have it for a trifling sum. That is why the operation of the free market is so essential, not only to promote productive efficiency, but even more, to foster harmony and peace among the peoples of the world.
That's it.
Wow, that's very good. I'm really speechless. It was really good. I'm